Hey everyone, welcome back to the Athlete CEO podcast. I'm your host, Eric Averill, and I am joined alongside my co-host and my brother, Brandon Averill. We are the co-founders of AWM Capital, where we partner with our clients to unlock the full potential of their wealth for maximum impact. And one of the things that we believe to the core at AWM is that the greatest driver of your net worth is your human capital. And so this podcast, the Athlete CEO podcast, is all about how do we unlock that human capital. And each week we bring you the tools, the tactics, and the access to the best in the world at what they do so that you can unlock your full potential. And so today we get the privilege to sit down with one of my favorite human beings, an absolute master at his craft, the owner, the CEO, the founder of Diesel Fitness and Diesel Health and Recovery, Phil Wallin. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you guys. So happy to be here. Such a great opportunity to talk to you guys. And like I said, here we go.
There we go. There's the dog pound, the dog mentality. And for the listeners that are wondering what is going on, we will get into this attack mode. One of the things that I love, Phil, we've known each other for probably going on about 2 years now, that we got introduced to you from this professional athlete industry that is on this pursuit to be best in craft, right? To be masters at their domain. And so they're always looking for the next edge of performance, which brought us to you because you've got something cool brewing on down there in Tampa. And really, I would say with PGA players and MLB players and other athletes across the world. Can you tell us a little bit about Diesel and how you separate yourself from just one of the other performance facilities in the United States?
Yes, absolutely. Diesel Fitness, it's a, like you said, it's a very special place. We're going on 8 years running. And if you come down here, like we said, we'll get into dog mentality, but it's a lot of hardworking individuals, kind of in a nice environment. And if you look at it and you look at Diesel itself from an outside in perspective, the biggest thing that I think drives and separates us is our culture. All right. And it's kind of built on the culture. And like people are always like, oh, good teams like the Patriots and these teams that win, the Yankees, they have good culture. Like, what is culture? Well, it's kind of, I think it's built on a set of standards, and the standards are high and they're excellent. And that's built on, the whole group of individuals that walk into Diesel day in and day out. They all believe in those standards. And I think eventually when you believe in these set standards, and we'll get into what those standards are, like then next thing you know, there's this vibe coming. Next thing you know, there's this belief. Next thing you know, people they come into those doors and they just say, hey, there's something about it. I got a little tingle right there. Like it just becomes something that empowers them to be better. And I think that was built on years of that hard work mentality, that dog mentality, a little bit of just attacking, and it's not so much like, attacking every day. We have to run ourselves on the ground. It's attacking, more so with the knowledge, more so with the day in, day out consistency, the little disciplines, the positive energy. It's those types of things that we do really well. If you go down by our dumbbell rack, you're probably not going to be real impressed with our weights. Most of them probably don't even weigh what they say. All right. But they're close to it. All right. But eventually, once you realize there, it's like we have the equipment, we have what we needed, but really the missing link between good and great is up here. All right. It's that power. It's that key there. So I think Diesel Fitness houses our training facility. It houses a nice new smoothie bar. It houses everything kind of an elite level athlete or individual would need for their physical side. Then we created Diesel Health and Recovery. Just this last year during the pandemic, we just went right at it and said, hey, we're going to keep going with this dream. All right. So we opened up Diesel Health and Recovery right in the middle of it. And that was something where, like, in that time, people are like, should you do it? Should it? It's like, yes, we should do it. All right. If you believe deep enough, you're going to go. All right. And that's what a lot of these athletes that end up being the elitist for a long time, they got to believe deep down, day in and every day, that they can do it. So again, Diesel Health and Recovery was built on that same desire and that same thing that we now preach to a lot of our athletes and a lot of individuals that we get to, are blessed to work with, and kind of help see where we can kind of help insert knowledge, insert some accountability, and really kind of just help be a part of their team. And that's what we really enjoy. That's what I enjoy, kind of getting in the trenches with them. But Diesel Health and Recovery houses our physical therapy, our chiropractic, all of our manual therapy work. And it also houses, I think, Eric and Brennan's favorite thing, which is our recovery center, which is our cold plunge, our infrared saunas, our red light therapy, our compression therapy, in which we then make all these nice creative we call them regeneration scripts, recovery scripts, where our athletes can then spend, in the off season, 2-3 hours, they can train, they can do their therapy, and then they can always end in that recovery center, which is always a nice challenge, to kind of help reboost and kind of reamp them so they can do the same thing or something, not the same thing, but the same effort level tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day. And that's where this has become so like, this where we are in fitness with these wearables, like these whoops and Oura rings, like it's created the ability to teach people how to, take care of their bodies better to where they can work harder. And then, that little bit, like we're trying to get this much better, couple saves here, couple wins here. All right. We're not trying to go crazy. Like, so that's why if we can use our knowledge and we can use our consistency and we can use the data to help drive how we're doing things, next thing you know, like our athletes, our dogs that want to be like always going, we can give them a bone. We can give them scripts that they can do day in and day out. That's going to give them their performance, their consistency, their mindset that they can do, and they can make these amazing things happen in their lives. So I think, Diesel Health and Recovery, Diesel Fitness, all encompasses here is just our in-house place where we can basically bring people in, put some sort of wearable, measurable data on them, and then basically start to analyze that data, look into it a little bit. Hey, we're, depending on the athlete, the individual, what we want to do with them, then we create these game plans, these scripts, these basically programs for them to start to learn their body, start to see the data. Oh, this is this is that. Next thing you know, these athletes are empowered because they're in more control of their lives, right? They're in control of their AM, their PM routines. They're in control of their off-season routines. And they also, most importantly, they know why. So a lot of the big thing that we think are different to answer that question overall is that we're not so much into like just telling our athletes like, I want to teach, I want to inspire, I want to give them, the knowledge so that they can go do it. Like, at the end of the day, it's like, I'll be there in the trenches. You can call and text me whenever you want, if you need a little fire. But at the end of the day, like after a few months of working with these guys, I've had some guys I've been working with for a decade. Those guys are maniacs, but they also are very intelligent. If they ever stop their career and want to work over at Diesel, I want them, because those guys know so much about their body. Because some of these guys, like the Whoop itself, it's been around for like 4 years or so, like maybe 5 now, huge. But some of these guys we've been working with, and some of my long-term clients, we've been wearing it since that thing flopped off every time you threw a med ball. Now it's got 1,700 bands, like, and it's crazy. But the cool thing is it just was able to teach us. So if you're open to learn, and I think that, a lot of us that are listening today probably have that growth mindset. We want to learn. And so when somebody can learn, and then you can show them like, hey, Eric, hey, this is your HRV. Hey, if we do a little bit, hey, if we don't eat past 8 p.m., 2 hours before bed, that's going to help increase that. Like, oh, okay, then you're going to do it. Like if you, and then the next day you do that and you're like, boom, and then your HRV goes up. You're like, oh man, like you're going to keep doing it. And then it's up to you to make those disciplined choices, when you want that HRV high or that. But those are the types of things that are fun. So there's some accountability to it as well. Like, so you give these, hey, Eric, here you go. Here's some things you can do. Next thing you can see these numbers and you're like, hey, hey, oh man, my HRV didn't go up. And it's like, well, look at, all right, our sleep performance is low. Remember, we got to stay this. So what I'm telling you there is they can see it. It's measurable. It's like, you can see it. Like you can see, like I only slept 6 hours and 57 minutes average in March, and my average recovery was 52%. Now, 6 months prior, leading into that, my average recovery was 60% above, and I slept 7.5 hours. All right. So what happened was, on the back end of the off season, my little baby was getting maniac. Like life just took me over, and I was being a little less disciplined. I'll be honest with you. I was eating a lot of snacks late. I was smashing my sleep that way, which isn't good. So you can see from there, I just learned. Like you learn, and then I get back into April. So I'm like, man, I don't want to have a bad month. Like, so I looked at my stats like an athlete. I look at my data stats. I'm like, hey, man, like I want to do better. So the last 4 days, Eric commented earlier, like I've been averaging 7.5 to 8.5 hours, but I feel really good. And I'm like, man, I'm back. Like, but it's just simple disciplines. So that's the big thing that I think we do is know that overall.
And I think that's awesome. And then I'll let Brandon jump in. But what I love to hear about you there is you went into these very tactical things that you can do. And so just orienting our listeners, taking a step back, one of the things that drew us so much to you and that resonates what we do at AWM is a lot of times we have treated whether it's our health or our finances very fragmented, right? We know in the athlete community, the strength and conditioning component has been this marquee focus. So it started probably in the late 90s, early 2000s with Mark Verstegen and Athletes Performance Institute that became Exos. And so you had the Eric Cressys of the world, and you have all of these unbelievable functional fitness training centers, which is fantastic, that specialize with the athlete. But what we also understood is you're not just how you train. And I would love for you to expand on these pillars where you've talked about, you know what, here's what a whole approach, an integrated approach to health and performance are. And we think about it the same thing on the finances, right? Usually people separate out their taxes, they separate out, their investments and their insurance. And what they're also doing is they're starting with how to optimize the money, the X's and O's, instead of starting with who is the human being and what are the priorities that I want to achieve as a person. And that's why I would love for you to share with the listeners your guys' approach to your three pillars and why unlocking performance and health is far more than just training. And then part B of that is the wearable technology of you guys were early to the party. You kind of saw where the puck was going, and I think we're probably just at the beginning. And so you've mentioned the Aura Ring, you've mentioned the Whoop. I know you guys are technology agnostic. I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. And those are great topics. And really, it's crazy if you look at the whole fitness field itself. And this is where it's fascinated me. And I've been in it, Verhagen, some of those, Exos. I was down at IMG coaching. Like I've been coaching strength conditioning for a long time, since I was 18, 35 now. But it was the last couple of years where I almost feel that I didn't lose. I still love moving. I still love training, but I just felt my attention wanting to steer away to this little thing on my arm. And like, because I'll be honest with you, boys, if any, those listeners out there that know Whoop, like when I put this thing on, I had 0 REM and 0 deep sleep. I averaged 5 hours of sleep. My HRV was like 30. A lot of my resting heart rate was 60. Like I thought I was fit, but I wasn't fit. I worked out every day, but I felt terrible. Like I was achy, I was tired, I had no energy, and my intrinsic drive to be to be impactful in the world was not there. I was surviving, and like boom, like so what happens? 4 years later, the dog was born, but like the dog was always in it. I think I just woke up. So I put this thing on, and you start to realize a lot of things. So I think to answer your first question is the pillars. Like we look at them three ways. One of them, like you said, is training. All right, your sets, your reps, your high intensity, your low intensity days, your energy system development, your your heart rates, all those things, your max heart rates. Baseball players, starting pitchers, like we look at their heart rates during, we look at them after, we look at averages within, like. But that's the training side, which I love. But that's just one of three categories that we believe create that overall balance, that holistic lifestyle, that integrated approach. The other ones we'll look at a little deeper is, lifestyle. Like that's the biggest one, I think. That's the one I think steals the show when it comes to like good and great. Like, oh man, look at first round guys. We got a bunch of first round guys every year. They all come up. All right, great. And then, eventually over year, the herd just packs and it thins and only a few guys get to top. I'm like, man, what happened? Man, what happened, dude? Everyone's good. Like, I'm over people telling me, like, oh, this guy's good. Everyone's good, man. Great. I want guys that are going to be good for the next 15 years. Those are the guys I want because that's what I think strength is. That's what I think a dog is. A dog is somebody that gets beat, gets pushed down, gets knocked around, has a bunch of adversity in his face, and he just gets up. We all saw Rocky in Rocky 4 when he got knocked down twice by Drago, and he just that's a dog. Like boom, boom, just going. Like that was a short period of episode of 12 round boxing fight, whatever it was. But we're talking about life. life never stops. These journeys just keep happening. Boom, boom. It's like, if you, whatever you want to use to kind of memorize, if you're in war, I've never been in it, but like you're getting blown up, you're getting attacked. But at the end of the day, how are you going to respond? And those things are built on, I believe, is your consistent lifestyle routines. And those are built on your discipline. And that's where I love, because I love the lifestyle, because this is where I can get guys to score up, because they tell me how good they want to be. But then I start to just be like, all right, cool. Well, 7 hours of sleep. We start basically putting in different parameters. So our lifestyle overall means we look into sleep, we look into nutrition, and we look into how we're balancing kind of all those components out. And then we basically look into routines as well. So our whole goal with our lifestyle is to make sure that we're recharging our bodies through a proper sleep. Not just like, hey, everyone always tells me, like, hey, especially these guys, like, they're all skeptical on these wearables. Like, hey, man, I'm like, hey, how do you sleep? Because I know why I'm asking that. I'm baiting you in. Oh, I sleep great. I'm like, oh, how you know? Because I don't see anything on him. I don't know. Maybe he's got a new one. He's like, oh man, I just sleep good. I always have. I'm like, all right, man. So then I go into being like, no, you're guessing, man. You don't know you sleep good. You're just guessing. Like, if we need data feedback. So that's the first sign. It's like, if you ain't wearing it, you're guessing. All right. So that's just to throw in that wearables. But like, the wearables are here and they're giving you data that if you don't know how to use it, we can teach. Like, that's what the education is. But if you're just naive to look at it, well, then you're going to get passed up, because this is why the dogs like it, because lifestyle is built on discipline. Discipline is built on consistency in your routines. So what we help people do is we help them build the routines, set the barriers within sleep, nutrition, routines, AM, PM, what you're going to do pregame, however they want to get detailed. And then we just kind of start to use the data to kind of watch it work or watch it not, or see what's going on. But as long as they know what to do and what, kind of what the data is supposed to do, we can monitor it. And then when we see dips in these recoveries, or dips in, or don't see, if we're in the off season program and we're not seeing the gains we wanted, hey, we can go back and be like, hey man, it's been 2 weeks. Well, I haven't put any weight on. It's like, all right, man. Well, you slept 6 hours the last 2 weeks. I don't care how hard you work out in the gym. If you don't get the proper amount of sleep, and then let's break down, if you don't get the proper amount of restorative sleep, let's break it down again. Restorative sleep, meaning REM and deep sleep. Deep sleep is your hormonal, 90 some percent of HGH is released then. REM sleep is your ability to heal the mind, the brain, the power of the machine that makes you want to work every day. Then, like, you're not going to put on weight. So then there's breakdowns of kind of how you can improve your deep, how you improve your REM. That's another topic. But you can see how, like, we build the barriers, or not the barriers, we build the foundation, and then we allow people to see it. So as long as you can kind of track it, you can kind of improve it. So lifestyle itself is our sleep, nutrition. Nutrition's another thing. So not, we talked about sleep a little bit, nutrition. Like, it doesn't mean that we're talking about like, cookie cutter diets. We're talking lifestyle. We're talking the ability to basically, put yourself, basically optimize your overall hours of your day. So if you look at nutrition in a factor of like fuel and performance, I always say, guys, like, we don't want 2 times, we don't want to overeat: before we train or we work or doing our skill set while we get paid, or before we go to bed. 2 times that we don't want to blow ourselves up. I call that blowing myself up. Like, periodically I'll be like, hey man, Phil, you low recovery today. And I'll look at him and be like, yeah, I bag of popcorn, then I had steak. Like, I just went bananas. All right, I ate everything. Like, you eat late at night, you can see some of those factors, but you can eventually start to really kind of understand when and what to eat at those times. So it's another way to kind of use these whoops. We use the whoops all the time, where it kind of gives us the data factor of like, people always think it's like red, green, yellow. This is what it means. This is why. There's a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of variables. That's why it's a little bit tricky for people to understand it, because it's like, hey man, I slept 8 hours and I'm in the yellow. And it's like, and then eventually people get frustrated because nobody has an answer for them why they're in the yellow, and they keep sleeping well. And next thing you know, they just put the thing off and put it in the corner. And they're like, it doesn't work. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that if you want to be great. Like, because it works. At the end of the day, I tell people, just wear it. Like, if you can do anything right now and you have one, just keep it on. And then hopefully you get in touch with somebody that can give you some education on what you're seeing, why. And the next thing you know, it's like cooking a fish. Because again, that dog wants to know. So nutrition's another one that's fun. We talk about fasting protocols. Fasting is nothing more like water fasting, juice fasting. That means I'm like, I came back, I traveled yesterday, 10 hours in a car. And so I fasted for 36 hours. I ate Sunday night at 8 p.m. and then I didn't eat again until I think yesterday at 4 or something. So if my math's a little off, I add somewhere in there. But that 36 hours, why did I fast? All right. I fasted for a few reasons. I know that when I eat, I have to divert my energy to digestion instead of focus. Well, I want to be hyper focused on the drive, safety's first, but I also wanted to recover well because I wanted to come in yesterday, like I did, and hammer the day because I haven't been a diesel for a few days. So, like for me, that was my peak optimization. All right. That's me as a coach, Phil. I use the same stuff. We use the same stuff with our coaches, like the same thing we teach because I want to be great. For this podcast, I just told the boys, I was like, hey, I trained already. Then I sat and I cold plunged a red light. I just jumped out of cold plunge like 10 minutes ago. I was shaking. But like that brings me good clarity. But that's what I felt I needed because I know my body and I know my system and I know my machine. And I wanted to be peak performance for us. So it's kind of cool where you can kind of slowly start to learn. Fasting's a whole nother topic too. But again, something where we found that when you eating is great, you need to do it to survive. But you can almost go like 20 days without eating. Not to tell athletes to stop eating, but it just says, hey man, if we can look into kind of windows of times where we can kind of, most of our athletes eat, they might fast 12 hours a day. Like, and most of that's sleeping. Like if you don't eat after 8, you eat again at 8 a.m., that's 12 hours. Like, and that's 12-hour mark is kind of when people are beginning to basically show signs of like, I think 16-hour mark, you get like a 100% increase in HGH. 24 hours, you get this thing called autophagy, which is like your body's regeneration system within your cells. 36 hours, it's a 300% increase in regeneration of your cells. So like these are things where like you start to talk about, how to optimize your day in and day out focus, your intrinsic drive, your energy. This is stuff we're talking about. It's pretty deep. And people that don't understand this is okay because it's new. But we're basically being able to drive this to then figure out what's best for our minds, our bodies, and our performance. It's really neat. So nutrition's one. And then the last thing we talked about with the lifestyle is those AM, PM routines. They always talk about control what you can. Control the first 30 minutes of your day. Control the last 30 minutes of your day. Those are two powerful times. Again, it's just like peaking for your day. Right when you wake up, most of our guys, we had to talk with a guy yesterday. I was like, hey, man, what do you do right when you wake up? He goes, I look at my phone, man. I'm like, I do sometimes, but that's not what we should do. All right, what we should do, but the reason is like, why? It's like, well, why would I have an AM routine? Because the first thing you want to do is you want to wake up and you want to get your mind right. You want to spend a little bit of time on yourself. You want to spend because again, you're going to have to put the mask on or whatever. You're going to have to put the cape on. I call it. You have to put the leash on me. All right. But you're going to have to put something on and go out and battle into the world. So like, I was just talking to my group of coaches out there. I was like, guys, we have the opportunity every day to impact people, to educate them on that. So if you're coming to here into diesel, not ready, you're falling below the standards. Choppity chop, boys. Spend the 5 minutes in the parking lot. I was listening to Meek Mill for like 10 minutes straight out there. And I was like, all right, you got to calm down, bro. Like, I was like, all right, too much gas. So I pumped it down. All right, but it's like whatever it takes, to get you going. But I think it's always cool because, a short, one that a little mock AM PM routine would be like, all right, maybe I get up and drink 20 ounces of water. All right, it's good to drink 25% of your water intake right when you wake up because we just didn't drink water for a whole, hopefully 9 hours in bed. 9 hours in bed would be a good thing because a lot of times you're going to have 10% of being awake. So that will give us maybe 8 hours. So then you go and you guzzle some water. That's going to immediately get you to feel better. All right. Because if you're groggy and like good sleep, bad sleep, whatever it is, water's your friend. All right. I splash them in my face too. All right. Just a little crazy splash. All right. And then you do that. All right. And then some days it's like I have the ability, I usually read 5-10 minutes, a little gratitude, maybe a little spiritual, get the whole, mind feeling good on that comedy side, understand why we're here in the biggest, kind of our bigger purpose. And then I might go into some stimulation. I might go into a hot, cold shower. It's Florida. My shower's not cold enough. I'm going to juice it up. But at the end of the day, hot showers are an easy way to wake you up because like, boom, you jump in there. And again, you go hot and then you go 30 seconds cold. And then you go hot, 30 seconds cold, move around. Next thing you know, you get out of the thing. You're like, all right, I can do this. All right, the day's coming. And then from there, you might get out and you might do some, some of our guys might go right in and they go grab a green tea, a cup of coffee, some athletic greens or greens of their choice, like supplemental. Like everyone has their thing they like. They have their chai tea or whatever it is. Like I'm not trying to change everything. I'm just trying to kind of sequence it for guys. So then you kind of build this 30-minute routine and then it gives you what? It gives you consistency. So when you wake up and you have that bad attitude, I wake up sometimes, I'm like, man, I don't want to be a dog. I want to be I just want to lay in bed. Then we just kind of know that all we got to do is get our foot on the ground and then we start moving. All right. The next thing you know, 30 minutes later, I'm back. All right, here we go. And we can go and we can, impact the day well. We can perform well. We can train hard. Like we can do everything we need to do to, be the elite mindset. So the routines thing's great. And then the PM routine, why do we do a great PM routine? Man, sleep. Sleep is everything, man. Sleep. And again, it's like, It's one of those where I'll be honest with you, until I was like 29, I strapped this thing on. I didn't prioritize sleep once. All right. This weekend, I hung out with some family and they're like, dude, you prioritize sleep a lot. I'm like, yeah, because it's super important. And when I don't do it enough, I don't feel that great. And I know that I'm probably not impacting the people as well. So, like, I do. I want to prioritize it. To be honest with you, people are like, oh man, like, I'm like, dude, I would much rather stay up late, eat whatever I want all the time and do that. But I'm making a disciplinary action to go to sleep because I want to wake up and I want to impact. I want to attack. I want people to be able to call me, who I work with and be like, man, that fired me up. That was good. And when I don't feel good and I don't feel energized, nobody wants to help anyone. And that's why this world's running around with people that don't want to help each other. All right? So let's just start with our minds and bodies there. The last thing we talked about on that pillar, so we have training, we have lifestyle, and then we have recovery. Recovery is fun. Recovery we use specifically here is our in-house. We use Whoop. It's got a great community platform, but it also has a nice database, a lot of data. All right. So that's why we kind of got to break it into like what's important for each person. Everyone is different. There is a lot of data, like I'm saying. So that's where it's like really for a lot of our guys. So we'll take an example like an MLB guy. They're used to data and stats. All right. So think of like a Whoop as like a Rapsoda or something for your throwing. So you're for your pitchers. All right. Spin rates, all this like that. 5 years ago or whatever, people didn't even know what that stuff was, or 10, I don't know. Like that was new and everyone was like, I don't like that stuff. I'm like, no, I got 2 of them out here and I'm not even a pitching guy, right? Like, because it's really good, knowledgeable data. So think of that and being like, any pitcher's like, yeah, I use it. I got to know it because that's what everyone's kind of dictated. The Whoop's the same thing. It's giving you data for your body. Like, I don't know what else you want for that. Like, we've never had data for our body. I've never been able to tell like, hey man, Phil, your HRV, this and that, that's where that's at today. It's like, man, I've never been able to, it's basically like an engine in your car. You got check engine light on. Like check engine red means like you're in the red recovery. Like check engine, that just means like you're not going to die. Your performance ain't going to fall apart. But you need to like figure out your lifestyle stuff, or hey, you need to calm it down, or you need to go up. Like that's where we can kind of pump the brakes, increase the brakes, whatever that is. So recovery itself, we look at 3 components. We look at HRV, we look at resting heart rate, and again, we look at sleep. Sleep pops back up again because sleep is your overall, I would say if somebody's like, hey, how can I recover the best? Sleep. Because that's naturally the body's rhythm. All right. Sleep. It shuts you down. And then if they say they want to go deeper, I'd say consistent sleep routines, meaning like get up and wake up, get up between 1 hour. So I get up between 6:30 and 7:30 every day. All right. And there's obviously outlier days. And then I go to bed between 9:30 and 10:30 every day. Like you have those consistency. Well, the great thing about me is I'm pretty consistent. Now I travel probably, I don't know, I travel a week, probably a week a month. So I've been on the road a little bit. But man, when I'm home and I'm grooving my discipline, my mind's great. Like I can pump really good recoveries. Now with a lot of our athletes, they got to travel around like a circus all the time. So then we got to start to regulate kind of like a lot of these guys, they're seeing like they become like these second shift workers. So they're getting like almost kind of bogged down with some of these things. Like they're just kind of losing their energy because they're just not able to kind that circadian rhythm. So that's where like some of the times it's like, let's just lessen the damage. Try to be around these times. So even just being like, hey man, try to wake up depending on whatever between 9 and 11. Try to, you go to bed between, if they're at 7:00 game, we're talking like, I don't know, 12 to 2 a.m. Like you can see how it can kind of mess things up in the whole sleep world. But again, we're just trying to optimize. We're trying to get a little bit better. So that's where we peel back and be like, hey man, if you know that you're better off getting up at 9:30 instead of 11:30 because you maximize your sleep and it's going to make you feel better, you're going to do that. So that's kind of a really deep.
To interrupt you right there, because I think it's so many of our people listening are going through exactly what you just said. The MLB season just started. We know that games are 7 p.m. They're not done till 10:30. They've got to travel time zones. Just the truth is, in this world of sports, there's the stimulants to get you up, but then there's this protocol of how do I get myself down? I'm going to be on an airplane. I feel like I have to eat at night. Talk a little bit about that. And I want to put it in this context. The thing, of course, where Brandon and I come from of owning a company where we're responsible for helping people manage their entire net worth. And we talk about the best investment is your human capital. So if you can recover quicker and play more games, right, is economically, what's an extra 10 games at your peak performance state? How many more home runs are you going to have? How many more strikeouts are you going to have, right? The the investment is not just some like nice analogy. It literally is. If you invest in these things, it will produce economic return for you as a professional athlete. Can you maybe just go hyper focus in these guys that are ending games at 11 o'clock at night? They're actually probably killing their recovery by taking the wrong type of whatever we want to call it, eating improperly. What advice would you give for the athlete, especially the position player who doesn't have the blessing of a 5-day routine? They've got to respond and play the next day. What advice would you give them?
Yes, and and it's good that you guys are smart individuals. You recognize that because the starting pitcher, yes, you have a little bit of luxury of understanding when you're going to battle and kind of peaking for that day, and knowing that you can eat earlier in the before the game starts and then not eat again once after 9 p.m. So we'll step back and be like, hey, the whole eat understanding like, hey, when we eat we're digesting and that's going to take our focus away, but eating does fuel our body. It recovers, it repairs, it gives us energy. But what we found in the data is one of the top, I would say, probably three factors of why people sometimes might get good sleep and they might train balancedly but they still have rough recoveries, is that they're eating too close to bedtime or when they're supposed to be sleeping. Because when you eat too much before bedtime, your body's going to have to then be like, all right, well, I can't go into deep sleep or REM sleep, which is our gold. That's where we make our hormones and feel good and repair, because I gotta process that steak and 2 glasses of wine that we had on the flight. And then we had a little cupcake too, or something like maybe just sugar right in, just zap you. So you can see that that's a major factor in is understanding the process. Because once you understand that, you're like, shoot. But it's like, okay, well, I don't want you not to eat because our position guys just played a game. They just fire around. But what we can do is understand, like, knowing if Eric was the shortstop for the Yankees and he woke up and he was at 36% recovery, like anything over 50, I just check it and I watch it. Okay, fine. He's probably going to be able to do everything he can. Great. But then I might be like, hey, Eric, you're showing signs of some fatigue the last 2 weeks. I'll give you a report. Like anytime you're under 40%, let's try to eat this type of food after the game. So it might be like, instead of a steak or like a red meat, it might be like, hey, if they have a fish and chicken option, let's go for a lean protein. And then instead of like a high complex carb, like, or processed carb, like if they have some, that, let's just go with some nice veggies. And you can always touch up on some, like, some sort of carb that's one ingredient, like brown rice, quinoa, things like that. So just think like you want to be more strict on your eating after the game when the body is showing you that it was fatigued that day, because then the next day it will. So knowing that having a little less and better digestible, more clean food in your body, it's going to allow it it doesn't have to be like, go through these processes. It can just burn it off and you can sleep better, increase everything kind of restoratively, REM and deep. And then what happens the next day? You wake up and you're, instead of being at 36 and below again because you pile with all this food in you, which most guys do because we've been taught as humans to be like, eat more for recovery. Sorry, not true. All right, so that's where it's like the next day, Eric knew he went 2 for 3, played great, had a high strain. So then he hydrated well. He had a really good, balanced meal. Maybe he had 50 to, depending on 40 to 60 grams of protein, really good carbs, great veggies, not too much oil, and then fucking boom. Then he cut it off, not too much sugar. I'll give him a little bit. Maybe he wants a half a cupcake. He can have it. You played well, all right? But then at the end of the day, Eric jumps. His recovery goes high. I guarantee it. Like, those are the types of things you tell people. That's we didn't break back anything, but we just peeled back a little layer. So now as a dog, like, hey man, I just got inserted this knowledge, and if I tell one of my guys that, he knows it. Now it's up to him if he wants to have the 2 beers and whatever the steak option or whatever that option, or snack on all the salted peanuts all night until 2 a.m. Like, So I would say, to answer your question, I would say what you're eating is important. And then I would say that another thing we can look at is timing. I would say eat it as closest to the game time being over as you can. So don't wait until, post game an hour later, like eat right away, right? Smash the spread. eat, kind of eat. Like if you're hungry and you like, I like eating. So I'm like, well, eat, if you want to have two chicken breasts, have two. All right. Just don't have the steak. All right. But if you're in great recovery and you're like, you had a great game, you're in the green, like maybe then you can allow yourself to have kind of, be a little bit more flex on your nutrition. So you can think that it gives you kind of like your levers, like, hey man, where am I at today? Cool. That just tells me where I'm at. And then it's just gonna kind of maybe give me some choices. I know I'm gonna eat after the game. It's just now telling you what kind of you're gonna eat and when. Because the closer you eat, you kind of eat towards bed, the more that body's gonna digest, and it's not gonna be able to hypersleep.
I think that's fascinating too, Phil, because right when you've hit on a couple themes I think are super important. It's we talked about this before we started recording, but it's the 10 to 15%. And somebody might go, 10 to 15%. But we all know, you made the point, in any of our fields, think about how massive 10 to 15% is. And how do you even know? I think it's going back, right? Like, do you have the data? How do you know? Great example. You probably woke up, you saw my sleep score this morning. You're like, what the hell did Brandon do? Right. And I'm looking and I go, you know what? I had the same routine then, 2 nights ago, good sleep score, same routine last night. Okay. Peel back. What the hell happened? Well, I happened to be wearing a continuous glucose monitor. I saw my glucose was high all night. Guess what? I had a small little chocolate bar before I went to bed. That sugar spike, right? It affects me certainly more than most people. However, it completely crushed my sleep. Woke up, wife's like, "How did you sleep?" Well, whoop, tells me I slept like crap. You know what? And so I think it's right, but it all goes back to knowing the data. We've got a lot of clients that are super progressive. They've got the hyperbaric chamber, they got the red light therapy, they've got, recovery on lockdown. They'll go jump and you keep saying recovery is fun, Phil. Let's call a spade here, brother. It ain't that fun when you jump in the cold plunge. I don't care who you are. I've yet to hear anybody be like, you know what, this is it. So, they've got all these tools, and it might make you feel good, but we're talking about the excess here, right? We're talking about the elite. And if you want to be elite, you actually got to know what it takes. And that's the one thing I think I've learned from you. And we do this in our business. We're all about measurables, right? But I never thought to try to measure the optimization of my human potential so I could show up today, get my breathing exercises in that I heard on a podcast with Andrew Huberman yesterday. I got the extra little inhale, right, to get myself pumped up for this. Eric didn't know what was going on. I was all over the place this morning. So I guess my question to you is just,
he was alive, Phil. Just a sidebar there. He woke up to the reality of performance.
I don't know what's going on, but I guess my question to you is, what do you tell somebody that, is searching, has that intellectual curiosity, finding all the tactics possible, because it is unique. It's a separator for diesel. How do they learn this side of it? How do they measure everything? Obviously the devices are great, but I mean, shoot, I wore the Whoop for a year before, you taking a look at my data and all that kind of stuff, and us sitting down for 30 minutes, and I knew more in 30 minutes than I knew in a year. So I'd love to hear your advice there.
Yeah, and I would say you nailed it with the knowledge. You kept saying knowledge, and that's really it. It's like once you teach the right growth mindset, and a lot of the people that we work with in our circles on both ends, like I feel like we have that trend of those people, and it's really providing them, that knowledge that's specific to them, so specific to Brandon, specific to Eric, like because there's some knowledge out there that's not, you're not going to really like get anyone to bite on, but the candy bar thing, like that's an amazing thing. Like that just fascinates me. And it's awesome because like, I'm like, people don't even know. It's just such small things that are kind of messing with their optimization. We're not too far off in mankind. We just need to know. All right. And I would say with anyone, you just, and that's for us, we're working really hard on our end on building a lot of continual education for people in the wearables. And we're working with some people on kind of continuing to give people the knowledge, because once you give the right person the knowledge, it's like giving a hardworking farmer what do they use, like a pitch or something, like a hoe, like he's gonna crush it. All right. So if you have the mindset and you have it, it's gonna work. It's gonna work for you. And it's really a self-exploration of yourself. So a lot of times it's just finding the little things. And like, to jump back to like HRV, resting heart rate, like the first thing we would do with any of our clients or any athlete that we decide and we want to be like, hey, let's team up and crush and take on the world, is we educate them, right? We give them what is HRV? Like, yeah, I've said it 6 times, and now all I want to do is tell you what it was. And really, it's like you hear it all the time. But just think of it as that's your body's nervous system. Like as a nervous system, like your body as a whole, it's telling you kind of HRV is balanced. All right, so it's on, off. All right, so it's more like a switch. Let's just put that back. Let's say it's a switch. All right, so here it's an on-off switch. So our on-off switch works really well when our electricity is working. All right, but if the electricity goes out or we get fatigued and things don't work as well. So our on switch might get caught on, our off switch might get caught off. So at the end of the day, our on switch being on too much, HRV would be kind of a lower HRV. All right, a higher HRV means that we kind of are more kind of in a balanced state. So we're kind of not off, but we're just balanced. So when I look at guys' HRV and explain it, I want to look at it. It's called heart rate variability. So it's your variability in your heart rate. So a lower HRV, and that's all depending on you. Every person is individual to that. It's an individual factor, but there's definitely lifestyle things that can help you improve that factor and get it to go up. So a lot of people are like, oh, it's individual to you. Like, yeah, it is, but you can improve it. Like, so stop saying you can't. All right. And you're like, all right, we're stuck at 20. No, you're not. All right, we're going to get it going. So that's a big factor in understanding that HRV, heart rate variability, on off switch. So when I see myself wake up, and I usually average, I'm just making this up. If I average 100 and I wake up at 80, well, then I know that I'm probably more kind of fatigued or stuck on. Like I need to basically kind of add some more breathing. Maybe I need to go to sleep. Like maybe I need to train. Like maybe I need to do different, a nice walk or some meditation or like, so it almost allows you to supply, hey man, once you get, an athlete and you talk to them a little bit, you get their goals, you get a questionnaire, you understand why they want to learn about the wearables. Well, then you can start to feedback and be like, all right, where your HRV is, you're at 100. We want to maintain this. All right, so we'll give you windows. And then if we see that you're lower HRV, we'll give you training scripts, we call them, like basically use an app in which we can upload programs for the guys. And they can just look at them and be like, cool. All right, this is what I should do. Like follow this. Here you go. I have a lower recovery under 50%. I'm going to do this breathing routine in my AM routine. And if I'm above, in green, I might, do something different. So it's like when I have low HRV, I might do something different. When I have high HRV, I might do something different. So it gives you a balanced attack. So many people think that work just means work, high intensity, crazy, but it's a balance. Like you get performance gains by stressing the body and then pulling back, stressing the body, pulling back, maybe stress, pulling back. It's not even pulling back, just means recovering, like regenerating, sleeping well in this. So I think the more you understand kind of that factor, the more you can kind of really appreciate what HRV. So overall, if I would say what HRV is, think of it as your overall number for your body's kind of overall health and how it's running. So if you're in the red, I talked about that earlier, like if you're in the red and it's, we're using our bodies as like a car, like that would be like your check engine light has come on. So that's something where like, and that factor, like you could see basically the red light comes on. I need to do something in my car to make sure it doesn't blow up. We're not going to blow up as humans, but we might basically only have a shorter fuse that day of like extreme focus and energy. So if I'm a starting pitcher and I got to start tonight at 7:05 and I wake up at 20% red, that doesn't mean we're not going to be able to pitch a complete game. But that might mean like, hey man, if you wake up low recovery, that's fine. We can change that HRV throughout the day. It's measured in like while we're sleeping, but it just tells us that throughout that day, we might not want to get too revved up over nothing. We want to be very crisp on our routines, keep our energy low. And then when that time comes to really accelerate at 7:05, we're throwing bullets and we can fire away and we can play, kind of perform as well as we need. And then boom, we're done and we can kind of recover. So it's then again, another way you can kind of utilize the data for each individual. So I would say, overall for your question, it's not as much of like, it's individual to the factor, but the biggest key factor is knowledge. So resting heart rate is another thing that a metric that we use. Resting heart rate is your body's, it's your overall health of your cardiovascular system, your heart. And I think with that, that's powerful, because think inflammation. Athletes all know inflammation. Oh, it's bad. It's your body's way of healing. So somebody with a high resting heart rate, for me, it's a great factor, because anyone out there in the world who wants to get fitter, healthier, perform better, let's try to get that thing to go down a little bit. All right. So that's a great one, because that's overall health. Like, so if somebody's eating poorly, sleeping poorly, not, having too much sugar, not training, not training enough, or training too hard without recovering, you're going to see that factor. You're going to see that, that inflammation. The body's always going to be stressed. So you're going to see that resting heart rate be up. So we always say, like, hey, once we get an athlete on board, or we get any individual, we are shooting for under 50, and then we're shooting for under 45, and then we're going to shoot for 40. You get under 40, I'll give you something. All right. I'll give you a hat. All right. Because now we're elite, because that's hard. I can get under 40, but I got to be crisp. I got to be clean. When I'm eating snacks late at night, I'm not sleeping enough, I'm staying up a little late, my resting heart rate jumps 42, 43, 44, real bad 50. Like, I just ate everything. So it's like, it's a fun measurable tool, but it's one it's important for all of us. Health, performance, energy. You want to know I have good energy? Why I have good? Because my resting heart rate's really low. So my body's just, all right. So it's not sitting there being like, hey man, give me a second. I gotta just move your arm, and there's a bunch of information, whatever in there. You get it, guys. Like, that's what we're trying to do. So overall, that's that's kind of a long-winded question to answer, but it all starts up here. It starts with educating your people, measuring it, creating the game plans, and then you have us, the coaches, to kind of, your coaches in the trenches with you, to kind of be like, hey, this is this. So we try to provide our guys, within the weeks, once we start working with guys, we try to touch base with them a couple times a week. Some guys, when they're in the off season or whatever, we might be more frequent when they're playing and stuff. We just want to provide them knowledge. So if we're providing them, some of my guys, I'm like, hey man, you don't have to always respond back to my text. They might be long. And then they know if they get me on the phone, they're like, man, I might not have enough time. So it's like, just listen to what we have, and then, you can look at it. But again, that's what the most powerful thing is. So I think what we got good at was understanding the data, and then understanding kind of how to analyze it, and then spit it back out to people so it's actually useful.
This is so impactful. Where I want to transition is to, if I had to label this next conversation, this is real talk. This is the candor. This is when we're going to get into the environment and the dog mentality, because here's one of the things we say all the time at AWM. You have to own your wealth. This is choice. You have to opt in. A lot of people talk about they want to be great. They want to be wealthy. They want, yet there is a cost. There's a prioritization. You making the comment that, people recognize I prioritize my sleep. So Phil may not be fun at the end of the night, but guess what? He has clarity and intentionality of what Phil wants to accomplish in life. And this is the thing, is knowledge is absolutely one pillar of performance, but it's not enough alone, right? It's the knowledge plus the skill set. So how do I take this information? We hear this all the time. Oh, the Whoop, whatever. I don't need it, right? Or, hey, the Aura Ring's better than the Whoop. If that's the conversation you're having, if you're listening to this podcast, it's not about what technology is better than the other. First of all, they're two different things. They measure HRV separately. This is about actually using information that you have to do something with. So if you just go listen to this podcast, or you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, you listen to the Tim Ferriss podcast, and then you actually don't do anything, you're not any smarter. You're not any better. You've just consumed information as entertainment. That's why Masterclass is a venture-backed company making millions of dollars off of us watching things but not implementing. And so one thing that you say, Phil, that I loved when we were just in Tampa over spring training was, you said, we figure out who are the dogs because then we will suffocate them with accountability. There are standards of excellence. And I think it's this, I can't tell you how many conversations we've had with guys being like, yeah, LeBron spends $1 million on his performance team. Russell Wilson spends, well, if I had more money. If you're the major league minimum guy, you're making $575,000 a year. You have the money. It's just whether or not you want to prioritize it and make the investment into your career. And I think that this is the conversation I think is so important. and this is coming from, two washed up guys that didn't make it. But from a financial standpoint or owning a company, you say this on another podcast that I loved, you're kind of like a wild animal out in the wilderness. You're not at the zoo. Nobody's going to hand you your meal to eat. You got to go out and you got to attack it every day. And so there's this intentionality that says, I have to have clarity of what I want to achieve, but don't kid yourself. There's a cost and there is a choice to opt in to doing things differently. And so I would just love for you to talk about that separator of what you've seen of the people that actually step into greatness and achieve it, because we have a lot of conversations that everybody says they want to be great, but then they don't invest their time, their money, and don't make the lifestyle decisions to set themselves up for success. So how do you guys approach the environment and the mentality of the people you work with?
Yes. And that's, man, you nailed it with the suffocate with accountability. It's like, we're not out here we want everyone to succeed that we work with, but we just know that there's people out there that they say they want to do it, well, there ain't no action, and then a month down the road, they're like, I don't know, like, why you on me? I'm like, why are you on me? I just listened to our convo. You want to be the best. Like you're saying there's a lot of people that want to be the top dog. All right. And you're telling me like through simple actions. That's why I love the wearables too, because they give me data to where I don't have to argue with people. I can show them and be like, here you go, man. That's why we're not having what we need. And then they look at me. And then real quick, if they start to play victim, they start to show those types of mentality, that ego comes out. I'll just look at them and I'll say, good, I'm going to press on this guy. And I'm going to do that because I want them to win. I want them to be great. And I know as a coach, it's nothing's good's going to happen if I just say, all right, yes. They got enough guys saying yes. All right, I'm real. I'm going to tell you what I see because I'm a dog. And what I told you the other day was that, yeah, like for the last 8 years at Diesel, we had to fight like dogs. All right. And the whole dog mentality came last year during the pandemic when we had to get shut down. Everyone was going crazy. All right. We had a lot of people leave us. That's okay because the people that left us were people that weren't supposed to be here. All right. Now we have this magnificent team. We spent the last year, 13 months working tail in and tail out. The dog mentality came from those minor league guys. We picked up all these guys from all over that didn't know. They were from all over the world. They're like, the guy in Indiana, come on down. Give them good rates and say, hey, let's work. Because the only thing we wanted were those guys to work. And we realized the whole world needed something to morale around because everyone was just sitting there, scared and worried. So you know what? We controlled what we can. The dog mentality came out. We controlled what we can. We worked every day, hard every day. We did the hard stuff. We worked hard. We did the ice baths. We did the grit. We kept showing up. And guys, eventually after the first month, people are like, oh, when's the season going to happen? Eventually after the second, third month, nobody said anything. They just showed up to work. Next thing you know, we just started peeling back more data with guys. We started to learn more about how to help guys optimize, how to improve guys, power, how to improve guys' physical comp, how to improve guys' mentality. But I'm so excited to watch the people that left here at Diesel we've had guys, probably 20 guys here for a year. I'm so excited to watch them grow. Some of them, not all of them are in the big leagues. It don't matter. These guys got better as a human. These guys got better character. These guys learned one thing. If you want to change something in this world, you have to start to work for it. And you have to believe in yourself. And some of the belief comes from working consistently, steadily, attacking. And we always say, keep attacking, because when in doubt, I go to work. All right. I go to work. I work hard. I coach. I train myself. I freeze myself. I try to learn things. I try to hustle myself to the top in my team. Because nobody's guaranteeing us. I don't have a guaranteed contract from anyone. All right. If we all get lazy and we get sloppy, nothing good happens. All right. And that's why to answer that question from the top, that's why we're probably different, is because we're hungry. We're hungry. I'm not. You're going to tell. If I ever not get hungry, you should fire me off the squad. All right. If you see me get soft, get me out of there. All right. But right now, I am hungry. We are hungry for success, and we know it. We know it because we feel it right here, because we know this little wearable has taught us a lot. And we know that a lot of people that have put on that wearable and taken it off. And that's unfortunate. But the ones that are willing to put it on and then know that, hey, man, when we talk, we're just going to talk about standards. And when you fall below them, we're going to let you know. And then all you need to do is say, yes, sir. Yes, like not yes, sir, but be like, cool, I'm going to fix it. And if we don't fix it, then cool. If we get wrecked by sleep, cool. But as long as we want to keep getting up and keep attacking, we're okay with it. Because we know that failure teaches us everything. So again, that's why it's awesome when you work with the right guys. Like, hey man, sleep's falling down. All right, man, I'll try to get hard. Like, we're all not perfect. So I think that mentality was like, that's how it kind of blossomed. And now it's like we're looking for the right minds, the right people that just want to learn and have a team of accountability, not a team of like, hey man, I'm going to be on you and like be your dad. No, bro, I'm your bro in your track. I'm your dog that, if you got something going on, if you got a problem, if you need help, if your back hurts, like you got somebody that you can trust. That you can be like, hey man, let's look at things. And that's what's cool about the wearables too. And the whole environment itself is like, when things go wrong, we have a plan. We can make a plan because we know we can look at the data. We can see if like, hey man, my shoulder's feeling fatigued. Like, all right. Well, most guys are like, oh, the muscles imbalance, this and that. I'm like, hey, did you look at his last week of sleep, bro? He hasn't slept fucking more than 5 hours. He's wrecked. Like, give him 2 days to fucking recharge and watch him grow. Don't pump him full of all the drugs. Give him some natural light. It's stuff like that. And I always say it's like an insurance plan and a factor of like, when things are great and everyone's fucking playing well, we're feeling great. Great, kumbaya, we're all in the green, happy. We have a high HRV, low resting heart rate, sleeping great. But when times get tough, what do we choose? We got to stick to the pack. We got to stick to the data. We got to get back to our routines. I always tell guys, when things get tough, jump on your routines again. And if you don't have routines, well, you need to make some. Because I think Eric Thomas used to just scream out, routines, strength is routines. Like, I told you, I didn't even resonate until like the other day it came on with a rap song. I was like, oh my gosh, I almost drove my car off the road. I was like, that was amazing. But like, that was it. It's so simple. But like some of the greatest speakers, motivators, that's what they're preaching. So now it's like, now if Eric had a Whoop on and he could educate on the Whoop, he could really get people to, do those routines. And that's what we're basically kind of do. So the overall environment itself goes back to the culture at Diesel, but really the individual. You don't have to be at Diesel to be Diesel. Diesel's worldwide now because Diesel's nothing more than an attitude. It's nothing more than that dog mentality. Dog mentality means they're going to attack when tough times happen. They're not going to play victim. They're not going to complain about the weather. They're just going to go to work. There was one day we were training here, and those 20 guys were like, we'd train at 8:15 every day forever, and it was just raining, and it was like 40, and I was like, ugh. But at the end of the day, we all just went out. First thing we did was on the ground core work. We all just got wet, just fucking. And the next thing you know, that whole month was our best training. Terrible weather, but every day it kind of sucked. And then when you were done with it, you felt really good about it. And the next thing you know, you look across the street and you all like, you feel it. You're like, man, it's going to be hard to touch us. Next thing you know, you pack on 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Next thing you know, you follow your routines. What do you start to believe in? Yourself. All right. And that's when you start to take off. So dog mentality is nothing more than taking ownership of life.
Yeah, man, I gets me fired up, and I think it's a good way for us to close out. Is I think to the quote of who we are precedes what we do, and you're making a choice. All of us on this podcast, I know the audience, the thing that we love about this community is we are all on this journey together to be the best at what we do, to be masters of our craft, and really to unlock the potential. Not for the sake of unlocking potential, but to make an impact. And that's defined to each individual. So it might be you being the best professional athlete. For us, it's how do we become, the best advisor to partner with our clients to unlock the full potential of their wealth. For a lot of us, it's how to be great dads, how to be great moms, how to be better spouses and make a positive impact in the world. And we live in such a time that there is such a gift of knowing information. So whether it's the data on how to optimize your energy and your performance that you've just heard about, is we really have no excuse going forward. So if you want to unlock that full potential, the human capital, which is the greatest driver of your net worth, there's no better place to start than here with the wearable technology, with getting the plan, as Phil said, this knowledge, this information that you can implement. And so, Phil, thank you so much. We appreciate you. For the audience, you can get all of this information at athleteceo.com in the show notes. We'll make sure Phil's information's in there. You should follow him on IG personally, Diesel Fitness, Diesel Recovery. We'll put it all in the show notes. And until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, and always be a pro.